Hello my quilting friends! Leah Day here with a quick Dresden plate tutorial. I want to show you how to use my new Dresden plate template set to piece a beautiful Dresden plate. We're going to learn how to prepare the Dresden plate templates, how to cut with them, and how to piece with them. So let's get started. So here are all of my Dresden plate templates, and the first step is to peel off this brown paper backing that's on the templates. I'm going to just take that away. And I have etched the side of the templates with lines, and that's the side that we need to stick something to, so that way these will grip our fabric and they'll hold firmly in place. So I like to use these True Grips. They come in a pack like this, and they have a kind of a circular donut shape grip, and then they also, you can poke out that little center circle so you get this little dot grip too. So I'm going to place that big circle down here on the bottom of that template. So it's right there between those lines. That's going to grip that edge. And then I can use that little dot up here on the top edge. I think I'll pull off a few more little dots and put them in both corners as well. So I like these True Grips because they're going to grip the fabric while I'm cutting, and they'll also grip the fabric really well when I'm using these for machine quilting, for quilting with rulers. So it's a really nice thing to have, and they grip gently and they hold in place, and you can see they are clear so that you can see right through them. They're not going to block your vision. If you want to, you could put another donut right in the center, but I think this is going to be pretty good. Now, we apply these to the line side because when you flip it over, that's the side that you want against your quilt whenever you're using these for ruler work quilting. It doesn't really matter if you're only going to use these for cutting fabric. It doesn't matter which side you put them on for that. But if you plan to ever use these for ruler work quilting, you'll want those lines to be face down on your quilt. So that is how I prep up all of my templates. I peel off the paper, apply some True Grips, and now they're ready for cutting. So first let's cut out some straight or pointy Dresden shapes, and this is going to be template 1, 3, or 5. So I'm going to take template 1 and just show you how to cut these shapes out. So you're going to line this up on your fabric, and I have cut a 5-inch strip of fabric here, and you want to make sure you flip it so that the side with your True Grips, the grippy side, is going to be face down, so that way it grips the fabric nicely and you can make the cuts without having that template slip. So now I'm going to flip the fabric over, reposition that template. That way I can always cut with my dominant hand. That's what I want to be able to do. Just lining that up nicely. I can cut that shape. And then I'll flip it, and then I can cut another shape with the least amount of fabric waste. Isn't that cool? So you've got, it's basically a parallelogram. This is a tumbler shape. So once you get started, then you can keep cutting as many shapes as you need with that angle. So that's how you're going to cut your shapes, no matter which one of these pointy or straight edge Dresdens you're working with. That's exactly how you're going to cut them. Now let's cut out some curved edge Dresdens. We can do this with template 2, 4, or 6, and you'll need to cut a strip of fabric that's 5 1/4 inches wide. You need a little extra width in order to turn this curved edge and make that nice and smooth. So I'm going to work with template 6 here, and I'm going to line this up again just like before, so I don't get any selvage over here, and that bottom edge of my template is nicely lined up with the edge of the fabric. So I pick up my rotary cutter, press firmly, and cut straight across. So again, I'm going to rotate this around so that way I can keep cutting with my dominant hand. Can't emphasize that enough. It's really important, and it's one of those things that I got really lazy with, and that's how I got cut real badly once. So here I'm lining up, I've got that edge, that top edge, it's all nice and set up. But you can see here, because the curve starts, we don't end up with anything to help us down here. So I like to start my cut right on the edge of that template. I go straight up, and then I come straight down. That's one of the few times I cut towards myself. Now if you look at that, I'm ever so slightly off down here. I kind of veered away from the template. Just clean it up if you need to. That's just fine. And so now I need to cut that curve, and this is one of those things that can get you in trouble, so you want to be real careful about it. I like to cut at this angle, working from about maybe a 6 o'clock clockwise around to 12 o'clock. Now if you're right-handed, it might work better to have it this way, and you'll be cutting maybe from 4 o'clock up to 12 o'clock counterclockwise. So play around with that and see what feels most natural to you. I like this angle. This works really well. I'm just carefully cutting that. And then I'm going to stop in the middle, reposition, and cut the rest of it as smoothly as possible. And I do think that this curve is much easier to cut with a smaller rotary blade. So this is a 45. I think if I went down to 28 millimeter, it'd be even easier. So that is how you're going to cut using these curved edge Dresden plates. Next, let's learn how to start putting these together to make an actual plate. So here is a really pretty Dresden plate that I've cut out, and I have finished the edge. There are 4 different ways that you can finish these edges. They make lots of different effects, and I'll be sharing more about that in future videos. So this is a pointy petal Dresden plate, and I used template number 1 to create this. So I finished those edges, and now it's time to piece them together. So what you want to do is arrange your Dresden just like this into a circle, and then separate it into basically 4 sections. We could say 4 corners. And so with our 8 petal Dresdens, you're going to have 2 petals in each set. For our 12 petal Dresdens, you're going to have 3 petals in each set. And for our 16 petal Dresdens, you will have 4 petals in each set. And the reason that we do this is just simply because it makes the piecing a little bit more accurate. We're going to do a little bit of trimming just to make sure that it goes together accurately. So now that we have our Dresden set up right, what I'm going to do is just flip it over, line up that folded edge, that top edge of the seam. We're going to take it to the machine. We're going to stitch through these with a nice accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm here at the machine. I'm just making sure these pieces are nicely aligned so that folded edge is lined up at the top and that the raw edges here on the side are nicely lined up too. And I'm just going to start stitching. This is one of the few times that I will back stitch. And the reason is I like that top edge to just be a little bit more secure. So I just do 2 stitches forward, 2 stitches back, and then I get started stitching right down the seam. And I'm just trying to keep the edge of my presser foot in line with those raw edges. I'm going to stitch all the way down, and then you could grab the next set of petals, put them together the exact same way, and so you can chain piece them together. The next step is to finger press those seam allowances open and then press with a hot, dry iron. We want to get that nice and flat. And I feel like I'm able to do this to press the seams open because I use a really tight stitch length when I'm piecing. I lower my stitch length to 1.5 millimeters. So that's a nice dense stitch, and it's going to hold and lock everything together really securely. So I feel comfortable pressing the seam allowance open, which will not only make the shapes more accurate, it will also make it much easier to quilt over it once we finish our Dresden plate. So I'm going to press all of these seam allowances open, give them a good press with my iron, and then I'll show you how to trim them up so they're going to go together perfectly. So this is just a little extra step just to make sure that your plate is going to go together really nicely. I'm lining this up with the 45-degree angle, and I'm just checking for square. So theoretically, if I piece this perfectly, then these lines should be straight and even. I should be able to line up these lines plus that 45-degree line. Now I found while designing my templates that that doesn't always work out, and sometimes you have just a little bit of fuzz over here, just a little bit of extra fabric, and if you trim that up, everything will go together really nicely. So I just trim off one side and then make sure that nothing is shifted and that 45-degree line and that side are lined up nicely, and then trim up that opposite side. And quite literally, I just cut off like a little fuzz. It's really not much of anything, but really that depends on your piecing. So if your piecing is not quite perfect, this trimming, this extra step to trim, can save your Dresden plate and can make it work out just exactly right. So here's the Dresden plate ready to piece together. Super, super simple. All we're gonna do is flip over these pieces, take them to the machine, and stitch through them just exactly the same way we stitched through those original petal shapes. So just like before, I've lined up my pieces. I'm going to take 2 stitches, I'm going to back up 2 stitches, and then I'm going to double check that these 2 fabrics are right in line and stitch on down. Now if you notice anything getting off, like especially down here at the bottom, if one fabric's slipping from underneath the other, just kind of lift it up and give it a little nudge with your fingers. Get it in line. Now here's something, I always like to piece from the outer edge in. So I'm always going to be lining them up that way, and then as I piece the 2 halves together, I'm going to break thread in the middle just to make sure that I'm always stitching from the outside to the inside. So here, let me show you what I meant by that. I have the 2 halves of the Dresden plate, and I'm just holding these right sides together, and I'm lining up this outer edge just exactly the same way that I did before. And I'm going to start piecing from that outer edge, do that back stitching, whole 9 yards, exact same. And I'm going to get to this middle area, I'm going to stitch back onto a scrap charger. And the reason I'm doing this is I always like to work from the outside to the inside, and that's just making sure that those outer petal shapes are always going to be nicely lined up. Because anything can happen to this inside, they can be completely off on the inside, because we're going to be covering up those seams. We're going to be covering that up with a circle, right? So always work from the outside to the inside. So here I've flipped over the piece. I'm lining up those edges just exactly the same before. Slide them under the foot and stitch that last seam. So I'm just finger pressing these seams open and then hit it with a hot, dry iron so they're nice and flat. And here is our Dresden plate. Now, to finish up this center circle, there are lots of possibilities. You can, of course, create a circle shape and turn those edges and applique it on the surface. And we have 4 different circle templates for you to play with. So 2-inch, 3-inch, 4-inch, and 5-inch. So you can take a piece of fabric, set it on top, and turn those edges. You can also fuse a circle of fabric on top too. You could also use these to turn the edges under and almost create a donut-like shape. So I'll be showing you lots of different possibilities for using these circle templates in a future video. So one thing that I think is really cool about this 8-petal Dresden is you kind of get 2 different effects. When you orient it like this on your quilt and have those horizontal and vertical lines, those seam lines lining up straight, then it looks like a Dresden plate. But when you angle it just ever so slightly over and orient it so the points are horizontal and vertical, then you really see this square in a square shape coming together. I think that is so cool. I love that. So I think that this is just such a fun way of playing with different shapes. Here are a few other Dresdens that you can make with the template set. This is created with template number 3, and I did the pointy edge finish. And here is a Dresden created with template number 1, but this is the straight finish. So you can see it creates like an octagon. Isn't that cool? And then here is template number 6, lots more petals, and I did the curved finish. So I turned that edge to create this beautiful curved finish. So you have so many different possibilities with this Dresden plate template set. I cannot wait to see what you make with it. So that's it for this video. I really hope that you enjoyed learning how to create this simple Dresden plate with me today. Of course, I did have to skip quite a few steps in order to create this video and make it short. So there's going to be many more videos showing every step of the process, how to finish those edges, how to create all of those different types of Dresdens that I showed at the end of the video, and how to turn those circle edges as well. So make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss out on those new videos. And you can find all of the tutorials that I've created so far for the Dresden plate templates at leahday.com/Dresden. You can use these templates for so many things. You can cut dozens of Dresdens, you can do tumbler quilts, you can cut tumblers, you can cut circles, and you can use them for ruler work quilting. So I have so many things to teach you with these templates, and I can't wait. If you have any questions, please post them to this video so I can answer your questions and help you learn more about quilting. Until next time, let's go quilt.